What is up everyone, Nova here, and I am going to be bringing you guys a Pokemon Wi-Fi battle guide. And just a guide to get better at, Pokemon battling competitively and getting into, the competitive aspect of the game and not just the kid version of it where you play through the game like a random nub and you don't really know what you're doing. So I thought I would do this because I'm going to be making Pokemon videos as my main content, and I'm going to be talking about stuff that some of you might not even know existed. So I thought that I would cover all of these topics in this one video, and this video will be split up into specific sections that cover each topic of competitive Pokemon battling in each aspect, and I will try go in depth as much as possible. Sorry if I do miss, a slight thing on each topic. Comment below if you notice if I miss anything in each topic, so let's get right into it. Pokemon typing. The typing of a Pokemon plays a vital key during a competitive battle. It is not the most important aspect of competitive battling, but is one thing that you should and must know to become a somewhat decent battler. As you see in the green box below, some Pokemon have dual types, and some Pokemon just have a single type. On the legend, as you see here, it kind of looks like a times table, which is basically what it is. If the move aligns with a check mark, that means that move is super effective against the opposing type and deals twice the amount of damage. If it aligns up with a triangle, that move is not very effective and it will deal half the amount of damage. If the move has an X, there will be no effect at all, and if it's blank, it does normal damage, and it just proceeds on as it goes. As you see here in the immunities, I'm not going to read it all because there's a lot there. You can pause the video and read it, as it is important information, and if you don't get some of the terms that are explained there, I will go into further detail later on in the video. But those are some important facts that you should know about Pokemon typings. So, you might be wondering, how am I supposed to learn all this? This looks like a big math equation. Well, here's the solution. You just gotta commit it to memory, or you can do it the fun way. Play one of the actual games, the RPGs, on the DS, or one of the Game Boy games, and it will just commit to you, and you will memorize it, and you won't even know it. You'll just be having fun, owning up Pokemon and NPCs, and you'll be like, wow, I already know this. I could do this when I was 6 years old, so honestly, it is not that big of a challenge. On a side note of this topic, I'm going to talk about team synergy a bit and how the typings work together on a team. So I'm on Pokemon.maryland.com here, which is a website I highly recommend, and I'm on the black and white team builder. So what you do is you click choose a Pokemon, and then you write in the Pokemon's name, you hit search, and it shows you what types you are weak to. And those types are highlighted in red. So as you see, Charizard is weak to water, electric, and rock. So say I decide to add another Pokemon, and in this case it'll be Darmanitan. And now look how many weaknesses I have highlighted in red. That shows me that my team has a major problem and that I should fix something. So to fix this problem, I see that I'm weak to electric and fire and water. So I'm going to add in a Tangrowth, which is a really bulky Pokemon, and now look how much that went down. You see, this is one of the keys to team building, is typing, but it's not the biggest key, and it is at the bottom of the list, but it is something that you should keep in the back of your mind. Pokemon tiers. Tiers are a very valuable piece of information that you must know to become a serious Pokemon battler. To put it this way, tiers are simply ban lists for Pokemon in order to balance a given metagame. Stronger Pokemon are banned to higher tiers, giving weaker Pokemon a chance to be used in a competitive environment. For the most part, tiers can be separated into 5 categories: Ubers, overused, underused, lesser used, and never used. Ubers is more of a ban list than a tier, since everything is just too strong for other tiers and they just sit up there. Tiers explained. Pokemon are separated into tiers using 2 methods, statistics and power. Power tends to be classified in terms of how broken a Pokemon is, or how much it over-centralizes the metagame. An example of a broken Pokemon could be Mewtwo, or should I say would be Mewtwo, who has been banished to Ubers ever since the first generation of Pokemon. In case of the former statistics, let's look at Garchomp, which is a prime example of a Pokemon over-centralizing the metagame. In 4th generation, Diamond and Pearl and Platinum, every team was essentially required to carry a few Pokemon who could take care of Garchomp. Over-centralization is often cited as the reason for Garchomp being banned to Ubers in Generation 4 and currently in Generation 5. Lower tiers, such as UU, LU, and NU, are determined by how much Pokemon are used in the tiers above it or how well they do in certain tiers. If a Pokemon is used in a certain percentage above battles, usually around 4%, it is considered to be in that tier and cannot be used in any tier below it. A Pokemon can also be found broken in its tier if it's placed into that tier's borderline list, which acts as a ban list for that tier and any tier below it. Now, I'm just going to touch up on this. I do not like the way Smogon makes their tiers. They base it on statistic usages only. So that means if everyone used Eevee, Eevee would be overused. When in reality, I think Pokemon should be tier based on how well they do in their environment, and that's why I like Pokemon Online better than Smogon, and that's why I just think Smogon isn't good. Anyway, let's go to tiers in general. Ubers is Pokemon that are far too powerful for any other tier. Keep in mind that Uber Pokemon are not classified by how powerful they are in the Uber metagame, but how powerful they are in the OU and other metagames. Overused is the most commonly played tier, no matter which generation you are in. All Pokemon are allowed, except the ones in the Uber ban list. Underused, Uber and OU Pokemon are not allowed in this tier. It is to give lesser used and weaker Pokemon a chance to flourish. Fairly popular across most generations, but not played as much as OU. On a side note, UU is my favorite tier. Lesser used and rarely used in Smogon's case. Uber, OU, and UU Pokemon are not allowed in this tier. This tier exists only for 5th generation and was added due to the sheer amount of Pokemon. It serves as the second weakest tier, only surpassed by NU. It seems about the same amount of play as NU. Never used, or NU, Uber, OU, LU, and UU Pokemon are not allowed in this tier. The least used and weakest Pokemon play here, and some of them will surprise you on how well they perform in their unique environment. Usually not the most popular metagame, but it is played. Never used is my second favorite tier, and then overused is my third, if you guys were just wondering. EVs, or effort values, are a very important aspect of Pokemon battling. Effort values are points that you get, and you get to invest them into your Pokemon stats, and it gives them more variety. You get 510 effort values, as you can see right here, and what you do is you distribute them depending on what your Pokemon wants to be. Generally, you put 252 in one stat and 252 in another, and then you have 4 left over to put in another stat. The way EVs work is that for every 4 EVs that you put into a stat, that stat will increase by 1. So as you see in Flygon's attack, if I put 4 EVs in, his attack goes to 237 from 236. Generally, what you want to do, like I said, is max out 2 stats. In this case, Flygon is a physical cleaner or sweeper, and what that means is that he is a physical attacker. So what you want to do is invest all in attack and all in his speed, and that's what you do. And then the 4 remaining effort values you just put wherever you want, and I'm going to put them in special defense. So that's basically what it is. And then another thing is the nature of the Pokemon. The nature of the Pokemon increases a stat by 10% and decreases another stat by another 10%. So, again, it depends on what Pokemon you are. In this case, for Flygon, I want to pick a Jolly Nature, since that increases his speed so he can outspeed other Pokemon in KO, and it decreases his special attack, which is useless to him because he has no special attacks to begin with. So as you see, it is not that complicated, and it is a very easy method to do. And if you want help on Pokemon sets and EVs and whatnot, you can always go to Smogon and or just go to Google and type in the Pokemon's name and then Smogon, and then look up the set from there, and it's pretty easy. Pokemon moves. Pokemon battle using an array of up to 4 moves. As with the Pokemon themselves, each move has a type and various stats, including base power, accuracy, and power points. Power points is how many times the move can be used. Moves fall under 3 categories. Physical and special moves are attacking moves that will do damage to the opponent. Status moves, as the name implies, change the status of a Pokemon in some way, for example, raising or lowering either the attacker's or opponent's stat, inflicting a burn, or causing confusion. In early games, physical attacks were any moves of the type normal, fighting, poison, ground, flying, bug, rock, ghost, or steel. Special attacks were those having the fire, water, electric, grass, ice, psychic, dragon, or dark type. In the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, however, each attacking move is categorized individually. Moves of any type can be physical or special, so now we have some fighting moves in the special category, psychic moves in the physical category, and so on. This has led to much more interesting and diverse movesets to take advantage of a Pokemon's stat strengths. Also, moves get a same type attack bonus, otherwise known as stab. Now, what this means is, if a water Pokemon uses a water move, that move will be increased by 50% and, henceforth will deal 50% more damage to the opponent. On a side note, some moves have what is called priority. What this means is no matter how fast the opposing Pokemon is, or how fast you are, this move will always attack first. A prime example of this is Fake Out, Bullet Punch, Mach Punch, and Sucker Punch. And a side note, Hitmontop can learn the most priority moves out of every Pokemon in the entire game. Entry hazards play a very important role in Pokemon battling. What entry hazards do is every time the opponent's Pokemon switches in, they take damage or they take a status. The moves that are entry hazards are Stealth Rocks, Spikes, and Toxic Spikes. What Stealth Rocks do is every time the opponent's Pokemon switches in, depending on their typing, they take a certain amount of damage. Pokemon that resist Stealth Rocks take less amount of damage. Pokemon that are weak to Stealth Rocks take a lot of damage, some even 50% of their health every time they switch in. What Spikes do is for one layer of Spikes, it deals around, if I'm not mistaken, 10% HP. 2 layers of Spikes will deal around 15% of HP if I'm not mistaken. And 3 layers of Spikes will deal 25% of damage every time they switch in. Sorry if my calculations are wrong, those are just off the top of my head. Toxic Spikes, for 1 layer, the opponent gets poisoned. For 2 layers, the opponent gets badly poisoned, and the difference is with badly poisoned, the damage increases every turn, whereas with poison, it is just a steady amount of health every turn that the opponent loses. Now, be aware that Toxic Spikes is kind of a gimmick, as it doesn't affect flying, levitating Pokemon, or Steel-type Pokemon, or Poison-type Pokemon. And if a grounded Poison-type Pokemon switches in, the Toxic Spikes disappear. Now, on a side note, and if a Pokemon uses Rapid Spin, all entry hazards go away. So, if your team is based on entry hazards, as a side note, you have a ghost Pokemon many people will recommend, along with me, to carry Stealth Rocks on every single team you make, as they play a vital role in every single battle, as they break Focus Sashes, Sturdy, and they just deal damage to a lot of threats in every single metagame possible. So, if you're building a really good team, make sure you got Stealth Rocks on there. Items in Pokemon battling play a major role, and they can in fact change what a whole entire Pokemon can accomplish. Now, since there are hundreds of items in the Pokemon world, I'm going to cover the mainstream ones and the ones that are most effective. The first set of items I'm going to cover are the choice items. Now, the choice band is an item that when equipped to a Pokemon, it increases its whole attack stat by 50%, but the flaw is, whenever it uses a move, it gets locked into that move. And what it means is it can't change moves until it switches in and switches back out again. The most common Pokemon that runs the choice band is Scizor, because matched with its Technician ability and Stab, Priority Bullet Punch, it does massive damage and makes one of the best revenge killers in the game, and is one of the most used Pokemon ever since it came out. The next item I'm going to cover is the Choice Scarf. What this does is it increases the Pokemon's entire speed stat by 50%, but like with the Choice Band, the Pokemon gets locked into a move. The most common Pokemon to run the Choice Scarf, in my opinion, is Terrakion, and it uses this item very well, because with Terrakion's sheer power and the Choice Scarf making it outspeeding practically the whole tier, it makes one of the best revenge killers and late game sweepers in the entire metagame. The next item I'm going to cover are the Choice Specs. What this does is it increases the Pokemon's special attack by 50%, but again, it gets locked into the move that it chooses. the Pokemon that I believe makes the most use out of the choice specs is Latios. With specs, Stab, Draco Meteor, anything that isn't Blissey or a Steel type is going to get severely damaged and most likely one-hit KO'd. The next item I'm going to cover is the most useful item for defensive Pokemon, Leftovers. Leftovers restores 1/16 of the Pokemon's maximum HP every turn. Leftovers is the best item for Pokemon that are defensive, and is also good for offensive Pokemon that don't like taking damage from Life Orb. Now, speaking of Life Orb, that's going to be the next item I'm talking about. Life Orb increases Pokemon's damage moves by 30%, but at the cost of 10% of the Pokemon's health every time it attacks. This, again, pairs really good with Scizor and Latios, and, you know, every other Pokemon that could use the extra little damage that doesn't mind losing HP every turn. So I know there are many more useful items out there like the Lumberry that cures any status problem, but I just don't have the time to go through each and every single item. But those are the mainstream ones that you guys will find the most useful. Team building in Pokemon competitive battling is the most important aspect. There are 3 different types of teams you can choose from. Hyper Offensive, which is a built team with many high-threatening Pokemon that synergize well together. Balanced is the team style that I prefer, is generally 2 or 3 defensive Pokemon or utility Pokemon that support 3 or 4 other sweepers. And then the last playstyle is Stall, which is a bunch of defensive Pokemon, and it's generally based around entry hazards and status elements and all that kind of stuff. It's a really boring playstyle, and it's just so defensive, and I mean, I guess it's reliable, but a lot of things counter it, such as Taunt. But you know what, I prefer balance, so that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to show you guys a balanced team that I just came up with the top of my head that does well in the current OU metagame. As you see, since I have Ninetales, it is a Sun-based team. So this team is generally based around Volcarona and Venusaur sweeping. So I'm going to get right into it. Volcarona is a high-threatening Pokemon in the metagame, and the only reason it's overused and not Ubers is because of Stealth Rocks. As you see, it is 4 times weak to Stealth Rocks, which means it takes 50% of its total HP every time it switches in, if Stealth Rocks is on the field. So, to prevent that, I have a Donphan over here that has Rapid Spin, but I'm going to get to all this stuff later. So let me explain the set. I have invested fully, well not fully, almost fully in defense and HP and a bit in speed to outspeed some common threats. I can't think of them on the top of my head, but Smogon gives a reason why. Flame Body means every time there's contact with this Pokemon, it has a chance to burn the opponent, which is really good and can cripple physical sweepers. And if you're lucky, you can switch into Tyrannitars, and if they use Crunch on you, then they can get burned and you basically won the Weather War. Quiver Dance is, the crux of this set, and basically, every time you use it, you get +1 in special attack, special defense, and speed. If you get 2 of these up, you're basically good to go and sweep the opposing team. Bug Buzz is the main stab move when it is not your weather. So say you have 2 Quiver Dances up, and the opponent sends in Politoed. You can't use Fiery Dance because it's a fire move and the rain powers it down, so Bug Buzz is what you rely on. Now when the sun is up, Fiery Dance is what you want to rely on because the sun boosts it to further levels and it does much more damage than Bug Buzz. And Fiery Dance also has a 30% chance to increase your special attack if I'm not mistaken. It might even be higher than that. It's insane. Morning Sun is a recovery move that recovers a certain amount of HP depending on the weather. If it's sunny, it recovers 75% of its HP, and that is amazing. If it's rain or just no weather at all, it's 50% if I'm not mistaken. And if it's Sandstorm, it's only 25%, so you really want to avoid Sandstorm and using that move in Sandstorm. Leftovers is so Volcarona has a better chance of survivability. The next Pokemon this team is based around is Venusaur. I max out her special attack and her speed, and I give her the ability Chlorophyll, which doubles her speed in Sunshine. So this means that no Pokemon in the entire metagame can outspeed her unboosted. Except Choice Scarf Terrakion, that's Jolly Nature. So I give her a Life Orb because she carries Giga Drain, which replenishes her health every time she uses that move, so Life Orb recoil is not a big deal. Growth is the main move of this set. Under Sunshine, Growth increases attack, which is not on this set, and special attack by +2, which doubles her special attack to threatening stats. Like, look, 328, double that. That is around 660. That's rounded if you add 2, so 656 special attack. Like, that's insane. That's like having greater boost than a choice specs and being able to switch moves. I have Hidden Power Fire just because it gets a stab boost basically underneath the sun, and it's just good for hitting Scizor and other Bug Steel types that resist Sludge Bomb and Giga Drain. Ninetales is, the star player of this team because she brings the sunlight, and without her, the sweepers aren't going to work. I gave her a specially defensive set because she needs to be, just surviving and taking a bunch of hits to win the Weather War. Flamethrower is the basic stab move, and underneath Sun, even unboosted without special attack investment, it will still do a lot of damage. Will-O-Wisp is to cripple physical attackers and Tyranitar. Roar is to just phase Pokemon out let's try to set up, and Protect is just to scout and get leftovers recovery. Now, Xatu is a main supporter to this team. With Magic Bounce, if you predict Spikes or Stealth Rocks, you switch into Xatu, and that move fails on your team, and you reflect it back to the opposing team. Now, Xatu is a really, bad Pokemon on paper. I mean, look at its stats, it's not good at all. But because of Magic Bounce, that's what makes it such a good Pokemon. I gave it Rocky Helmet instead of Leftovers because I could use the extra damage whenever it gets hit by a physical attack, and plus, I have Roost to heal 50% of my health every single time I want. Thunder Wave is to cripple Pokemon and just get Para Hacks on, Pokemon, so it gives the team the upper edge in, battle, and gives chances for Volcarona and Venusaur to sweep. Psychic is just a stab move for damage, and U-Turn is to predict switches. Dugtrio is also a star player to this team. With the Focus Sash, it can switch in to opponents' weather starters such as Tyranitar or Politoed, and then proceed to kill with Earthquake, or if they're running a Choice Scarf variants, Dugtrio can use Sucker Punch, which is a priority move. Dugtrio is just there mainly for trapping opponents' Pokemon that threaten the team or their weather starters once they are a low amount of HP. Dugtrio, I believe, I don't know what tier it's in. I think it's like LU right now. It's because it's not a good Pokemon, obviously, but the thing that makes it good is Arena Trap, which makes the Pokemon not allowed to switch out. So, like I said, it traps opposing Pokemon, opposing weather starters and threats. Donphan is here to Rapid Spin Stealth Rocks away if Xatu cannot bounce them back. He's just, basically a backup Pokemon. And he's here also for Stealth Rocks and Priority Ice Shard. And with max attack, with all those dragon Pokemon running around, Ice Shard is very valuable. Rapid Spin is to spin away entry hazards, as usual. Stealth Rocks, just to, provide entry hazards for the own team. And then Earthquake to deal mass amount of damage. So, that's basic Sun team, if I am not mistaken. So guys, that is the conclusion to my Pokemon battling guide. Hope you enjoyed it. If I missed a few things, comment below so people can take note of it. And please favorite the video, and share it to a friend who might not know how to battle Pokemon and they want to learn. Because this video took me a really long time to do, a solid full day's length of work. So that would be really much appreciated. Thanks a lot guys, stay tuned for more Pokemon videos. I got an epic Eevee sweep coming up. Yeah, I can't believe I pulled it off, an Eevee sweep. That'll be my next video, so stay tuned guys.